your life is on the line and you know that you're on an oxygen tank and they're going to put you in your head, see what you do. Because the bottom line is that me, I'm one person. I can never miss.
Guy's not being loyal to you. How could you be loyal to him?
Yeah.
And whether you're your father or not. So, you know, but it's always been hard because it was my father.
The word came down, this guy had to go. You know, we didn't know nothing about him until the last minute. And I liked him. I liked Billy. He was a nice guy, but...
Welcome to the show. Welcome to another episode of Chattin with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got David Bowman. What's up, man?
Hey, Bill. How you doing? Yeah, he went off the deep end, and then his dad was really, Nick was pressuring the shit out of him because, you know, they knew who did it. I mean,
Where's the first place you went after you did that? After you went to that hotel, like, what were you like? Oh, we got to think of a plan, like.
Yeah, well, the plan was get out of Las Vegas so we could, you know, breathe and think, and didn't have to worry about running into them or the tons of people that they knew, you know. So
obviously you've heard this story from the other side, right? So you know what they were talking about now, right?
Yeah, and so we went to Lake Havasu, and then I think then we went back into Vegas and picked up some money, and then Jerry wanted to go see his old friend who used to was a partner of his and left, and he went back to Oklahoma, and this is when things got weird. I mean, this is when I say in my book, it's like the fear and loathing in Las Vegas is really what it was, because I mean we were going at it because Jerry was just so bad. Once if he had it, he was like those little rhesus monkeys that they do the test with, that they put the bowl of cocaine and they put the bowl of food, and he'll do that cocaine until he dies. Seriously.
Yeah.
And I mean,
there's people like that, man.
And it would just drive me crazy. Look at him like, dude, you know, do you really want to do more? I mean, we just need to shut it down, you know, go to sleep, get up, eat a good steak, and you know, tomorrow's another day, man. That would be me. But no, he'd just be sweat rolling out of his head, and then he would get depressed, and he'd look at me, and we'd be in a hotel room. He'd go, Dave, what are we gonna do, Dave? You know, all of a sudden now my mentor is looking at me, he's all strung out, and he's looking at me going, Dave, you know, we got to give it back, Dave. And Nick's calling him and pressuring the shit out of him. And he does he ends up actually, we got back into town, and Nick had convinced him to give Frank back what he told him that they initially got. So we actually did all the blow. We ended up getting an ounce of coke, and I ended up like cutting it. I mean, I even cut the shit out of it. I pulled the quarter out. I threw a quarter on, and that's what he ended up giving back to him, which was like, to me, I even looked at him. I said, dude, this is like spitting in their face again.
It really is.
Yeah. But I got to give him credit. He actually took 1,000 ludes and that ounce of blow to Frank, and then but Frank told me when I saw him in 2019 that I guess Nick was really slapping him in the face and was really busting his balls in front of Frank, because I think he was basically telling Jerry when he gave him back that dope, you're lucky Frank don't blow your head off, is what he was telling him. You and the kid both.
Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't try to do something then.
Well, I told Jerry when he went to go give it back to him, I said, dude, in fact, when I liked that dope, I said, I will never be in the same room with these people again.
Yeah. So
so I said, just so you know, because I'm not dumb.
Yeah. Like try to throw you under the bus again.
Yeah.
So what happened?
And well, Nick was calling, and
Yeah.
what'd you say?
So what happens after after he gives him the stuff, the little bit of stuff back? What happens next?
Well, we had already planned to go down to Houston, Texas. Jerry knew a guy who was pretty, connected himself down in Texas, in Houston. And he owned a place called the Bunny Club, which was on Bissonnette Street, kind of down by the University of Houston. And I haven't been there for years, but anyhow, it was a strip club. We went down after, to the club to basically manage the club for another guy whose name was Sal Sabella, and he had gotten totally out of control with the freebasing, and he is so bad that he actually tried to go through the Houston airport with a gun. And I guess they arrested him and shit. But this guy was connected big time too, and his brother in Las Vegas, Tony, was. These people were big time people, and so we did that. And Jerry told me he was going to hook me up with Bob. Bernie was the guy's name. And I was going to start running blowback to Colorado. That was the lie, jerked me to, initially to go down there, because he owed me a bunch of money that I gave him from the Quaaludes and some of the blow that we sold, and to help him pay off Nikki's funeral. And then he also got a new car before we went to Houston. So he owed me quite a bit of money. And I said, well, don't trip. If what you tell me is true and you'll hook me up with Bob, we'll get square and it's no big deal. But that never happened. He was always out at Bob's house, and me and Joe got left at the condo, and the condo was right across from the bar, from the strip club. So I spent a lot of time there, and, then I would just run across the street to the condo. But after a while, I was like, and little sidebar, I'm glad it worked out the way it did, because as it turned out, as I found out later, that the DEA had already gotten into Bob, and I guess they ended up taking his ass down. In fact, I met the guy, the agent. I didn't know he was an agent. They told me his name was Jerry Ross, and but as I found out, I believe it was from Jerry, actually, because he left, and after further on down the road here as I get to it. Yeah. But yeah, the guy was a DEA agent, and so anyway, after that, it became clear to me and Joe that Jerry was burning us, or basically just leaving us twisted in the wind, man. I mean, we were running out of money, and it was like, I got to start I tell him, dude, what's going on? And he started acting weird. And then I gotta be honest with you. I'd never been to Texas, and I didn't like it there. I didn't like Houston. I loved the food. All right. I had this great barbecue place around the corner, but other than the food, I freaking hated it. And I wanted to get out of there. And I felt, I had an uneasy feeling, even when I was in the bar at night. This was real dark strip club. I just pictured myself getting whacked. Okay. I really did. It would have been real easy. And I felt like a sitting duck, and my gut was screaming at me to get the hell out of there. And then that's basically when Joe and I talked about it. And we said, you know what? We're going to go back to Vegas. I'm going to call up the police, and I'm going to dump them all, And that because the bottom line was, and you'll read about it in the book, and I did a YouTube video about it too. We discussed, whacking Frank and Tony Spilatro, and it could have been done because Jerry was with Frank, and he's the one that suggested it to me. He says, Dave, you could just go in there, and he said Elaine will tell me when they're there.
And then you won't have to worry about anything, right? Then you won't have to worry about anything that you did in the
Oh,
past.
well, no, not necessarily. See, I mean, we thought about it. I mean, it was seriously discussed and thought about. But as I thought about it, the long-term consequences were not, it was better to do it the way I ended up doing it.
And Frank was protected by the mob too, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, if I would have, if that would have happened, if we would have hit them, I mean, you think that was going to go just, there would have been repercussions. Yeah. So, because those dudes well, Tony was. Frank, not so much. What made Frank important was his association with Tony. He had direct contact with Tony Spilotro, and that's what made him so valuable to the feds, as we'll get into later. But yeah, so I came back, and now this is in October of 1980. Okay, so remember, I met them in June of 80, first week of June. And let me also say, I left something out. I was there, it was July the 1st of 1980. I was there the night that they pulled the video camera out of the ceiling of the upper crust. Leo discovered it actually, and he climbed up there. Those guys, what the FBI didn't know is those guys had already knew about that ventilation shaft up there because they had hit the Italian clothing store a couple doors down. So they were real familiar with that up there. So Leo got up there and he pulled it out. And I'm telling you, it was a big deal. It was all over the news. Oscar Goodman was there. Tony was there. I sat there. I was probably 10 feet from Tony Spilotro and Oscar Goodman. And there was God knows how many FBI agents. And Elaine was working and she was a nervous wreck. And she looked at me and Joe and she's like, because Joe was off that night. We had just decided to go down there because I wanted to see the show. I really did. I told Joe, I said, fuck it. I want to check this out. This is going to be a classic. And it was. And then after we watched it live and in person, we went back to the apartment and turned on the 11 o'clock news. And there's Oscar Goodman, saying how they were harassing his client and using Gestapo tactics on Mr. Spilotro, and which I got to admit, they really were. Gestapo tactics. As you know, as I look at it now as a 60-year-old man, and not 19 or 20, I understand what it was all about now, and how they targeted him and how they threw the heat down on him constantly. But then, like I said, I came in up until I approached the police in October of 1980. They had nothing on Frank Collada, Ernie, Tony, none of them. And like I said, it wasn't for lack of trying. And they wanted them bad, I'm telling you. And then also remember that the Metro Police, Metro Intelligence, and the FBI united and formed what they called the Organized Crime Strike Force, which they really didn't unite, okay? I can tell you from working with both of them, they didn't like each other. They didn't trust each other. And that shit had been going on for a long time. And it was going on when I was there. I mean, they would, you know what I'm saying? Professionally, they did what they had to do together. But off the record, they did not speak well about each other. Okay. But so when I came forward, I met with, I first called the secret witness hotline, was my first contact. I spoke to Detective Nage Palmer, and he assigned me secret witness 491. And that became an infamous secret witness down the road because they didn't know who it was. And
did you get paid? Did they pay you for any of this information?
Oh yeah. I mean, I got a whole $1,000 when they cracked Frank Collada with with the stolen furniture, as I'll tell you what I gave them. And so it didn't take long. I didn't want to, you know, I wasn't in. See, when I went into this, I wasn't planning on this thing going on for a year and a half as it did. I mean, honest to God, I wanted to go in and out, you know, give them Frank and whatever, you know, and just be done with it. But that is not how it went down, believe me. But anyway, I ended up meeting, Palmer suggested that I start calling Gene Smith, you know, from this point on, which was like a week into it. And that's when I told Gene, I says, hey, you know, look, I'm all about meet you face to face. I said, I'll do whatever I got to do. If you want me to testify, whatever, but you just got to take care of me. That's all I'm saying. Get relocated, give me money to relocate myself, whatever. Because understand this too. This is very important, and I want people that watch this to understand. You know, I didn't get busted and in trouble and go to the cops. Okay, I wasn't working off a case. I had no charges on me at all. I chose to take Frank Galata out using the cops and the feds rather than shoot him in the head. And because I respect human life, and so I took that route instead. But I just wanted people to know that I'm not, you know, that guy that, you know, got in trouble with Frank and got busted and ratted to save my bacon. I did this as a civilian, and I just wanted to let people know that. And then as later on, and you'll read in my book, and I'll show that right here. It's Bringing Down Galata.
Right there.
I can tell you. I got involved in a shooting after all this happened in Colorado Springs, Colorado, with a friend of mine from Las Vegas, over a dancer that I had dated for a couple of weeks, and a jealous boyfriend pulled a gun on me in her apartment, and my friend ends up shooting him in a struggle, and we panicked, took off, went to New York for a couple of weeks. All the while I'm communicating with the police, you know, and telling them, you know, we didn't murder anybody, that the guy pulled a gun on us. The girl lied. Okay. But anyway, I just wanted to touch on that briefly. And we were indicted by a grand jury on 8 counts, 2 counts of first-degree murder. Okay. In that situation, all I had to do was lie and co-sign the woman's story that she told. And I would have never done a day in prison. But I just could not do that to my friend, who actually, you know, saved my life by when the guy pulled the gun on me. And because I wouldn't do that, I ended up getting an 8-year prison sentence for it. So the first time offense, you know, I didn't kill or hurt a soul other than just was standing there. And I get a 8-year return for that. So I, you know,
how was your when you went to prison? How was your stay in prison, knowing that you cooperated with the government? How were they treating you in prison? Were they giving you a hard time, or?
Well, see, nobody knew that I cooperated with the government because the government burned me. Okay, and we just hadn't got to that part yet. Okay, after what happened was, once I met with Gene Smith on Halloween night of 1980, and we drove around in his white Bonneville that he drove around in. Now, this is the cop that shot Frankie Bluestein out in front of Sunrise Villas a couple days before I got into town. And I told him that as soon as I met him. And I told him that, I says, boy, I says, those guys don't like you very well. I says, they hate your guts, as a matter of fact. And he says, yeah. And he says, why is that? He says, well, they said you murdered that kid. And Gene bristled at me and he said, oh, that's a goddamn lie. He said that kid had a gun. He pulled the gun. It was registered to his brother, and he laid it out XYZ to me. And I said, hey, man, I says, I believe you. I said, I'm just telling you what these guys were telling me about you. And then that's when he told me about the hit that they put out on him. And I talk about that in my book as well. And I named the 2 hitmen that he told me and showed me actually their pictures, because he handed me the Nevada Black Book while we were driving around. He hands me this black book, and he says, look at that kid. He says, tell me who you know and what you know about him. And, I'm flipping through this thing, and I mean, there's every heavyweight, Chicago gangster in there, and Kansas City. And I mean, some real, heavy and looking people, let me tell you. And I recognized a few, by the way. Tony was in there, of course, and Colada, I believe, was in there. So, but that's when I told him about the stolen furniture.